Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know me, John Musket. I am here today with a new interview, and I'm excited about this one. We've got Tucker Hargrove with Elder Care Law of Kentucky. Tucker, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here, John. Excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, well, I guess let's start off. Tell me a little bit about what you do and where you're located and things like that.
Yeah, so I work for the firms you mentioned, Elder Care Law of Kentucky. Our main principal office is here in Louisville, but we also have offices in Lexington and Georgetown area and clients spread throughout the state. Essentially, our job is to assist people with, the cost of nursing homes, long-term care, and a lot of that includes protecting of assets, but also helping people maximize their money in that retirement phase and as they face health issues, to essentially make sure that they don't go broke in a nursing home and they can live a comfortable lifestyle without that stress and burden of financial dependence.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And if you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have zero education or knowledge of this topic. But you and I have spoke a few times over the last several months, and I feel like this is a good topic for a lot of people that may not know a lot, and we can kind of give them some tips and some pointers here today on what they can start doing and start planning for. And we're going to try to gear this mainly about around real estate. Obviously, I know a little bit about real estate, so I think elder care and real estate really tie together quite a bit on multiple facets. So, you know, as a 35-year-old person myself that has parents that are 70 in their 70s, it's something that I really need to start thinking about and talking with them about and making sure that they have plans in place for hopefully not for a long time, but for the future coming up and what they need to be starting to think about and taking care of. So, um, you know, we'll kind of do a little question and answer session here. So, going back to mainly talking about real estate topics. So, one of the things that I hear a lot of, and many people out there may hear as well, is they're purchasing a home that's part of an estate. It's an estate sale. Talk a little bit about an estate. I know it's kind of a basic question, but tell people a little bit about an estate, what that is, and how it can pertain to real estate.
Yeah, estate is one of those words where you hear it a lot, but you can kind of connect it to scenarios like estate sales, somebody passing away, but it's hard to get a definition of. But in the most simplest of terms, an estate is simply what you leave behind after you've died, and that can be house, cars, jewelry, anything that was in your name, titled in your name at your death, becomes a part of your estate. And as part of your estate, the courts essentially get to decide what happens to your estate based on state laws, unless you have a will which directs the courts exactly where you want your assets to go.
Okay, very good. Now, what I've seen, and I've been a part of some transactions where I've got a client who is purchasing an estate sale, and when that happens, you kind of, people kind of getting that idea of, hey, if it's an estate sale, I can get a deal on the property just because it's, it could be where the home was left to some children and they just want to sell the property, get rid of it and move on with their life. That could be one thing that would potentially give someone a lower purchase price and maybe build a little equity in the home. Also it could be where the children tend to want to fix the house up to where they can, kind of flip it or sell it for a little bit more money. And maybe the parent had put some money into the house prior to their death as part of what we're going to get into next, which is the topic of Medicaid. So I know that's kind of a word that people hear and they may not know a lot about it and they're unsure about it, but it also kind of has like not a bad word, not a bad meaning, but it's kind of like, I don't really know what it is. Tell me what it is. So, how important of a role can real estate be when it comes to Medicaid planning and asset protection?
Yeah, so Medicaid used to be, and I think it still is quite popular, with just thinking something you have to do, have to go on when you're broke. You can't have any money, have to be completely broke, and then you get to go on Medicaid. But really, that's not the case. A lot of people don't understand that there's certain things that Medicaid actually allows you to keep uh, without counting it against your eligibility. So you can actually have what most would consider a substantial amount of money through different assets and still be on Medicaid and not have to potentially sell off everything. And one of those exempt assets is your house. The Kentucky government allows you to keep your house as an exempt asset, especially if you're married. Your spouse is allowed to continue to live in the house, own the house, without any liens being put on the house. And so when you go to apply for Medicaid, you can have, I believe, up to a $500,000 home and not have to worry about having to sell that or get rid of it to be Medicaid eligible.
So one of the ways that somebody can, what's the term? Is it buy down or what's that term?
Spend down.
Spin down. There you go. So one of the ways somebody can spin down to become eligible for Medicaid could be potentially to put more money into their current home, like do a bathroom or kitchen remodel, or I guess they could. And I've heard you mention this before, which is why I'm going to bring this up. But to where they could sell their current home and maybe purchase a newer home that's a little more expensive, but maybe a nicer home, maybe more of like a townhouse condo that's a little more, that they could put a little more of their money into to not show as much income.
Right. There is a lot of planning that can go with the house, and it's always to your advantage to have those opportunities with the house. Sometimes, like you said, it's working with a realtor and seeing how can I maximize my money to put the most money into my house, whether it's finishing a basement, fixing up the garage that you've been waiting on forever. And in some cases, it could be just handicapping the house.
Right.
You could be, your spouse could need handrails, different things like that. And that's really when we work with realtors, is to maximize the money we're putting into your house. We don't want to just throw money into the house if it's not going to add any value or any comfort. We want to take the money that we're spending down, put it in the house, either for the most important, which is your comfort, which could include the handicapping side of things. But secondly, we want to add the most value. So that's when we work with realtors and say, where can we put money that's going to increase the value of our house?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good thing, and for sure a good way to spend that money down, and also take care of your home to where if you leave it for your children, that they're getting a home that's in good condition. So one of the things that we hear a lot as people get older, they don't have kids at home, they're thinking about that upcoming spending and whatnot. One term is downsizing. Now, if someone were to sell their home and downsize, is it good to title their new home into their children or dependents' names, or what is the advantages, disadvantages of doing something like that?
Yeah, and we actually get that question a lot. And it's usually in passing conversation. I tell somebody I'm in elder law, and they say, oh, my mom just, bought a house and we titled it in my name to protect it for Medicaid purposes. The problem, there's really two main problems that arise from that. First is, if your house is now titled in your son's name, your house is at risk to things that could happen to your son, whether if your son's in a high risk job, such as a doctor or an attorney or something along those lines, and they get sued, now all of a sudden your house is on that chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your son passes away, then and it goes to his wife, well, now your daughter-in-law is in control of your house. And as much as people love their in-laws, they don't necessarily want them included in those kind of decisions. But on the second side of that is financially, the government allows you to get some major tax benefits with your house if it passes through after your death. And this is especially true for people who have lived in a house for 20 years, family farms that have been in the family for a long time, is you could potentially be losing out on thousands of dollars of tax advantages. Just recently, we were talking to somebody who they did this with the family farm. They titled the kids' names and replaced dad. Well, if they keep it this way, they're risking losing out on a $50,000 tax advantage when they finally do sell some of the property.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a big deal. Can be a big deal. So yeah, awesome tips on those. That's good. And this might be a stupid question, but thinking about sticking to the elder and kind of going into that long-term care scenario. And I always like to I don't want to give advice because I'll leave it up to you. You're the expert on these type of things. So when people ask me this, I'm definitely going to gear them towards you. But, if someone is potentially going to long-term care and they do own a home, is it better to sell the home prior to going into long-term care, or is it better to keep the home until that person maybe passes and then selling the home after the fact?
Yes, so that's kind of one of those questions that's very fact specific because there's so many strategies when it comes to Medicaid planning and everybody has different scenarios and needs. It could be the case where it's better to keep the home and, see what happens going that route. Some people, they would rather, it might not be as financially advantageous for them, but the house causes them stress, it causes an anxiety. And as long as they have that house, whether they're living in it or not, it's going to be something that's constantly on their mind and they're worried about. We've got clients who have houses and, even though they're not living there, they're worried about a water break, flooding, storms. And so in those cases, it's better to not do as much financial advantage, but to provide that peace of mind. So it's a really fact by fact situation. But in a lot of cases, our goal is to maximize the financial side while also providing that comfort.
Awesome. Cool. And one thing I'll just kind of mention as I'm thinking here. So, if there's a situation where the parents have passed and then there are multiple children, multiple dependents who all take ownership of the home due to that, we run into this a lot and people ask questions. Well, when it comes time to selling that home, who signs the contract, who does everything? So in that situation, each child and their spouse, if they have a spouse, is required to attend the closing and officially sign off on the property. I think the one thing people don't realize is that the spouse also has to be there to give, and that's a Kentucky law. Maybe different in other states, but I get that question a lot. So, yeah, as far as, those are all great, good information as far as the real estate side. So on that topic of that spending down, what are some other assets that people may have that they need to think about if they are applying for Medicaid and in that scenario?
Yeah, one of the most important things and one of the first things I like to tell people is that if you're married, your spouse is allowed to keep up to $128,000 and you still be on Medicaid. A lot of people don't understand that. And so the spouse who's staying at home will continue to spend money on nursing home care when they could have stopped spending that money a long time ago. And if they had just known some of those, just the rules, just the basic rules of Medicaid, it could have saved them a lot of money in the long run, because the last thing you want is to go broke with a healthy spouse who still has a long life ahead of them. So that's one of the first things I tell people. Other things is, the importance of planning ahead. The further in advance you plan, the more money we can protect. And really, if you plan 5+ years in advance, there's really not a necessity to spend down, because we've been able to reallocate your money in a way to where when it comes time for you to need long-term care, you don't necessarily have to spend down money.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other advantages is by doing planning, you're allowing yourself the advantage of, going to a nursing home that you prefer. If you wait till the day you need a nursing home, you're going to be stuck going to the nursing home that will take you. But by planning ahead and working it with us, we can help set you up to be in the area that you want to be in, stay in the neighborhood you want to be in, or be in the nicest nursing home that you're wanting to be in.
Right. Well, and I think if people watching this don't have any takeaways but one, I think that one takeaway should be the word planning, and how important that is to have that planning in place up front, to where you're not, where it just doesn't hit you and you're in a bind and you don't really have a plan moving forward, or kind of what you're going to do. And you could potentially, do you agree, you could potentially miss out on a lot of money, lose a lot of your assets that you've spent a lot of basically your whole life building up.
Yes, and we actually have a client who is still alive in a nursing home, who she spent over $1 million in the nursing home.
Wow.
If she had come to us from the very beginning, we could have saved essentially all of that. If she had come to us at the last minute, we could have essentially saved half of it.
Wow.
So that just shows you really how much you could potentially lose. And really, on average, a person's going to be in the nursing home 2.5 years if they do go to a nursing home. And that'll cost you between $150,000 to $200,000 just in that short amount of time.
Wow, that is crazy. That is crazy. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Tucker, appreciate you jumping on here with me today. And what is the best way for somebody to get a hold of you to talk about this?
Yes, so we always do free consultations. So we're open now for business here in Louisville. And my email is tucker@eclky.com, or you can reach me on my phone at 859-433-2131.
Okay, we'll have all that information down below, so as they're watching this video, they'll be able to see that as well. So again, man, thanks for jumping on. I hope business is continued success for you, and have a great week.
Great. I really appreciate it, John.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. See ya.